everybody. Welcome to this on-demand Cleveland Hug event. Again, very, very sorry if you entered our live version and were faced with some of our technical difficulties. We're working closely with Bevy, which is the platform that we use for Hug. We're working closely with their support team and with the HubSpot User Group support team to figure out what happened and make sure that we don't have that issue again. But pivoting here to an on-demand version of today's presentation, and we'll be following up with some information on office hours as well. So you still have plenty of opportunities to ask Madison all of your questions about lifecycle stages. So to kick things off, my name is Elizabeth Jurin. I'm the Director of Operations at Ready North, which is a digital marketing agency based in Cleveland, but with team members across the country. We were HubSpot's first ever partner agency, and we also established the Cleveland Hug. So we're very excited to be leading the Cleveland Hug again this year. We do have a packed presentation led by Madison Filipiak. She's here with us today to talk all about lifecycle stages. And this is one of those topics that can apply to really any HubSpot user, from its simplest iteration to something that's super customized. So Madison is the perfect person to lead us through this conversation. She's a consultant at Ready North, and she has tons of experience in optimizing HubSpot portals, creating really smart strategies that really align marketing and sales and other teams for the best use of the HubSpot portal. So I'll turn it over to Madison to kick things off, and looking forward to an office hours session to talk about everything that we've learned today and get everyone's questions answered.
Thank you so much. And like you said, thank you everyone for your patience and understanding with the technical difficulties. Hopefully this on-demand session is still super helpful. And one benefit of this is that if you find the beginning not super relevant, but the end super relevant, you could always fast forward through your on-demand version. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here and we can get started with the session for today. So we are talking all about life cycle stages, as Elizabeth had mentioned. And the goal for today is first to define the default lifecycle stages that HubSpot provides users and understand what they mean and how they relate to the context of your business. Then we'll briefly talk about how lifecycle stages align with the buyer's journey that you may be familiar with. We will also connect these back to your business, because at the end of the day, we need to see how this is applicable to your marketing and sales process. And we will finish the session with a slew of tips and hacks that we've learned along the way with lifecycle stages. And we've organized this to start with the more beginner level tips and tricks, and then get into some more complicated strategies with lifecycle stages. So this really should hopefully be relevant to anyone that's watching this presentation. So to start off, what are lifecycle stages and how does HubSpot define them? So HubSpot defines lifecycle stages as a property in your portal that is used to categorize your contacts and companies based on where they're at in your marketing and sales process. So we're going to define each of the default lifecycle stages that you see in your portal today. And you will notice that if you're in your portal, you can now customize these as well. So we'll first just get into the basic definitions of the default stages that are available to you. And then we'll briefly touch on those customization options as well. And you'll see on this slide, we do have a tip directly from HubSpot product team that they see most companies using anywhere from 6 to 10 lifecycle stages to categorize their contacts and companies. So once you understand these, you may realize that some are applicable to your business, other ones maybe not so much. So you may realize you don't need as many, or you may need more. The first lifecycle stage that you'll see in HubSpot is a lead. So this is essentially anybody who converts on a form and enters your HubSpot portal. They typically haven't done any other sort of action to categorize them in a different way. So it's basically the first base level going into a portal. You may be marked as a lead. We often see a lot of companies realize that contacts or companies going into their portal may be initially marked as a lead, but they move on to another lifecycle stage fairly quickly. The next level of lifecycle stage is a subscriber. So this would be anybody who has signed up for your marketing emails. So if you have a blog and somebody subscribes to that, they would be marked as a subscriber. Or if you have a newsletter and somebody subscribes to your newsletter, that would also be considered a subscriber. Moving on from subscriber, a contact or company would be marked as a marketing qualified lead. So this is somebody who is more likely to become a customer than others in your portal. Now, this definition from HubSpot is very vague, and it's intentionally so because this can look different for every business. Oftentimes, we will see companies categorize contacts as marketing qualified after they've downloaded an asset from their site, or perhaps has raised their hand in some way other than just a subscription. So for example, if you have an ebook on your site and somebody downloads the ebook, they may be marked as a marketing qualified lead. Or if you host webinars, webinar attendees could also be marketing qualified leads. Oops, we skipped one. Sales qualified leads are what would come after a marketing qualified lead. So this is anybody who is ready to talk to your sales team. Oftentimes, people will get categorized as sales qualified leads when they've filled out your contact us form, or if they've signed up for a free trial or a demo. So again, it does depend on your business process and could look a little bit different. But typically, sales qualified leads are somebody who has been vetted by your marketing team and seems to be ready for that next conversation with your sales team. An opportunity is often anybody who is associated with at least one open deal. So they've had a conversation with your sales team and they've been brought into your deal pipeline. And then a customer is what it sounds like. It's somebody who has a closed deal with your company, ideally closed one. So this is someone who is now a customer of your company. Evangelist isn't used as frequently with a lot of our clients that we see, but this is any customer who's advocated for your organization. So they are super valuable. And if you have very happy customers that are very willing to give you testimonials and participate in case studies, these are the people that can really generate more business for your company, either by attracting new leads or by generating repeat business with that same happy customer. The last default lifecycle stage in HubSpot is other. And the other stage would be any contact or company that doesn't fit into the other stages. So we do caution that you use this lifecycle stage carefully for a few reasons. One we'll get into a little bit later, but this should be somebody who is never going to become a customer of your business. So they don't necessarily fall into any of the other stages. You would mark them as other. One example that we give people could be a vendor or a partner that your company works with. So they may help you get business if you have a marketing partner, for example, but they may never become an end user of your product or service. So they could be marked as an other lifecycle stage in your portal. And really quickly, I want to explain how lifecycle stages align with the buyer's journey that you may be familiar with. And if you're not familiar with it, the buyer's journey is basically the process that somebody goes through from becoming aware of a problem to making a decision and purchasing a product or service. So the stages are often the awareness stage, where, like I said, they're aware of their pain point or problem, and they're starting to do research around possible solutions or just trying to better define their problem. And then in the consideration stage, they're starting to be more aware of the possible solutions for their problem. They might be comparing and contrasting solutions. And then in the decision stage, they are aware of the provider that they want to work with, and they're getting ready for that sales conversation. So naturally, just by defining those stages, you can probably see how lifecycle stages line up with the buyer's journey. But to take it a step further, we can also look at HubSpot's flywheel concept that they had launched not too long ago. They used to think of everything in funnels, but have since transitioned into the flywheel, where in a very similar scenario, you have attracting strangers, or in the lifecycle stage realm, we're attracting leads. subscribers. They're not super familiar with your business. Then in the engage phase, we might be speaking to marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. They're downloading content, they're joining the conversation, they're more familiar with your services or products. And then into the delight phase of the flywheel, we are dealing with customers and promoters, or in life cycle stage terms, evangelists, that are promoting your business and generating new leads, generating repeat business. So you can see how this turns into a flywheel effect, or a cyclical effect, where life cycle stages kind of fold into that mix. And I had mentioned earlier that HubSpot now also offers custom life cycle stages. And it's a common question of, what do we do with custom life cycle stages? So they were launched, and then there wasn't really a ton of instruction around how we should handle them. Should we be using them? So we turned to Kyle Jepson, who is a major HubSpot thought leader in the industry. He is a HubSpot Academy evangelist. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend that you do. He posts a lot of cool updates with HubSpot and just other tips and tricks that you may not think of. But we asked him, what is HubSpot's position on custom lifecycle stages? What should we be advising HubSpot users to do with these? And he said that the general consensus is that the default stages are pretty good. They really don't see a lot of people finding a need to use the custom lifecycle stages. So if you don't have a very strong use case for using a custom lifecycle stage, he said there's really no reason to change the default ones. He had also added that they've seen a very small percentage of HubSpot users actually use the custom lifecycle stages. And he said the most customization that they often see is by changing the name of the default stages rather than adding or removing them. So just something to keep in mind. Before we get into the tips and tricks, I want to overview how the life cycle stages can be used to improve your business processes. So a lot of the items I'm about to list here, I will be going into a little bit more detail in a bit. So if I'm vague, it's probably intentional. But the first way that life cycle stages can be used in your business is with your email nurturing efforts. And this is one that I will get into in a little bit, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. But life cycle stages can be used as trigger criteria or goal criteria in your workflows, and we'll provide 3 examples in just a little bit. Life cycle stages can also be used in tandem or along with your lead scoring system. So if you have lead scoring rules set up in HubSpot for actions like the amount of blog views somebody has, or their job title, or their industry, they're all getting scored based on that criteria. You can use your lead scoring system in combination with life cycle stages to sort through your warmest leads in your portal. So for example, if you have a list of all of your marketing qualified leads, maybe that's 5,000 contacts, it may not be realistic to have your team tackle or reach out to all of those contacts, but you can take that list and then you can sort by lead score. So I want to see all of my marketing qualified leads that have a lead score over 200. And you can start to filter your list and prioritize the leads that make the most sense to reach out to first. And like I kind of just mentioned, you can use life cycle stages for your sales outreach. It doesn't make a ton of sense to ask your sales team to reach out to somebody who's marked as perhaps a lead. That would mean that they have very little interaction with your brand so far. They may not even be very familiar with your services or products. So they definitely aren't ready for a sales conversation. And if you don't have life cycle stages set up in your portal, that's hard to know. How do you know which ones are leads, and how do you know which ones are ready for a sales conversation? So when you use life cycle stages, you can easily create lists of your sales qualified leads and then divvy that list up among your sales team and have them prioritize those individuals for outreach. You can also better report on the effectiveness of your marketing campaigns and your assets by seeing how many qualified leads each one had generated. So if we want to see how many marketing qualified leads had also filled out a form to download our ebook, you can look at that in HubSpot's reporting tools and get a better idea of which assets are performing the best, which channels are performing the best, and then really start to hone in your resources and your time to those assets or those campaigns that are generating quality leads. And the final way that we're recommending that you could use Lifecycle stages is to identify bottlenecks. And I do have a clearer example of this later on, so I won't go into detail, but you can use either Lifecycle stage conversion funnel reports or just your totals, a report of your total lifecycle contacts in each lifecycle stage to see where are the gaps in your process. So if you have 100 plus MQLs and 2 SQLs, there's probably some disconnect between why do you have so many marketing qualified leads that aren't turning into sales qualified? What could you change in your process to make that better? And this was supposed to be interactive with the live version of our hug, but I will have you think through the answer to yourself as you're watching this. And you can fast forward to see the answer if you think you know it right away. But I do have one question or example that I'd like you to think through on how you would identify the right lifecycle stage for this particular scenario. So I'll read it out just real quick. A senior consultant at Ready North becomes a new contact in your HubSpot portal. They browse several pages of your website before downloading your latest ebook. What would their lifecycle stage be? And I'll slowly start to remove options that are incorrect. Right. Hopefully you got that right, but that would be a marketing qualified lead with the definitions that we've provided earlier on. So the reason that this person would be a marketing qualified lead is because they downloaded an ebook. So they downloaded a larger piece of content. They're raising their hand that they're more likely to become a customer than others because they're interested in your content. They filled out the form, they exchanged their information. So for that reason, they would be a marketing qualified lead. All right, the last portion of this session is all about different tips and tricks related to life cycle stages. And as I mentioned, we tried to organize these as best we could into most basic to most complicating. And I have a couple demos throughout to show you. And we also pulled a couple more recommendations from other HubSpot experts. The first tip is that you should meet with your marketing and sales team together to define the life cycle stages as they relate to your business. I've emphasized this a few different times, but just using the basic definitions that HubSpot provides will not be helpful for your team. You need to understand your own marketing and sales processes and then define each life cycle stage as it makes sense for your business. The most critical part of this tip is to be sure that everybody on your team, especially the people working within HubSpot, understand these definitions. And this tip was pulled from Shane Wiley. She is the go-to-market enablement facilitator at HubSpot. And she had said that deciding on the definition of each stage together can do wonders for getting leads to marketing, from marketing to sales faster. And understanding what a quality lead looks like can seriously help your business. I cannot stress that enough, that it gets very complicating between marketing and sales if you haven't defined your life cycle stages clearly, or perhaps you're on different pages of what a marketing qualified lead should look like, or what a sales qualified lead should look like. If you're experiencing issues between that marketing to sales handoff, it could be because your definitions are not clear. And this next tip is from Kyle Jepson. He had mentioned that a lot of times when people think they need more life cycle stages, what they really need is another object. So objects in HubSpot would be things like contacts, companies, deals. And if you have, I believe it's sales enterprise level, you can create custom objects as well. So the example that Kyle provided was one question they get often is, should I have a lifecycle stage for churned customers? So to make your database a little bit better organized, the best answer would be no. You don't create a lifecycle stage for churned customers, but instead you would create a subscription object that's then associated with the contacts and companies in your portal. And then the subscription record would include the status. So it could be active, churned, overdue, or whatever else. A very basic tip, but if you don't know where this is located in your portal, it's super helpful. In the settings of your portal, so the little gear icon in the top right, if you go over to objects on the left and then contacts, you'll see this lifecycle stage tab. And in here, you can set a couple different automatic settings that are pretty simple, but should be toggled on in your portal. The first is the lifecycle stage that any contact or company is marked as when they first enter your portal. I'd recommend it just being a very low stage, so either lead or subscriber. I wouldn't go anything above that because it's hard to assume that a new contact or company is anything more than that. But that does back up the point that I had mentioned earlier, where a lot of contacts and companies may start as a lead, and then as soon as they've done some sort of action, they would get moved elsewhere. The second toggle that you'll see there is to automatically set the lifecycle stage of an associated contact or company when a deal is created. And this one should be opportunity per the definition that we had shared earlier. And then the third, when a deal is moved to closed won, it can automatically change the lifecycle stage of the associated contact or company to customer. So these are very easy to set up, but I would recommend having them toggled on. It just saves your team a lot of time, and it alleviates any sort of gaps in data. If it would alleviate the risk of having contacts or companies with no lifecycle stage in your portal. And in that same area, you'll see up at the top, you can toggle on the sync lifecycle stages. So you can have it set where when a primary company's lifecycle stage changes, so do the associated contacts lifecycle stages. This may make sense for some businesses, and it may not make sense for others. So just try to think that one through before you would turn it on. For example, if you work with a company, but it spans large geographic regions, and part of that company, so for example, like the Pittsburgh area of that company turned into a customer, but maybe the Cleveland area of the company is still a marketing qualified lead, you wouldn't want the main company to turn to a life cycle stage and then all the contacts underneath switch over if it's not accurate. So that's one example. Normally with geographic regions, people have different company records for different geographies. But if you don't, just think that through before you would check that one on. One way to change an object lifecycle stage manually is through its record page. So I'll show you this in real time really quick. So if you are, let me back up real fast. If you're on the contacts index page and you want to get to the record, you would just click on the name of the contact that you're trying to change, and you'll be brought to the record page. And on the left-hand side, you'll see about this contact, some of the properties that are listed there. You'll see lifecycle stage as an option, and you can click the drop-down and adjust the lifecycle stage manually. And from that same screen, you can also view the history of the lifecycle stage property. And this tip and the one before it can apply to any property in HubSpot, not just lifecycle stages. I'm not going to show the demo for this one because our demo portal doesn't have enough history to show you anything meaningful. But in these screenshots, you'll see what it looks like. So if I'm in that same area to change the lifecycle stage of a contact, I can hover over and click details, and it will bring me to this property history screen where I can see when the property was changed and why it was changed and by who. So if it was a manual change, you should be able to see the HubSpot user that changed it. But this just gives you a little bit more transparency into why the life cycle stages are changing, and you can identify any errors in your process. So if you're getting a lot of opportunities marked, but they shouldn't be opportunities, you could pinpoint the issue here by seeing, oh, okay, it was changed because of this action, and then you could go in and fix it. You can also, this is a newer feature, which is very convenient, but you can set the life cycle stage of a contact or company through your form settings. And I'll show you this one too. In the past, we used to have to do this through workflows. So this update was very helpful. If you need to edit a form, so you'd go to your forms page and then click edit. Then you would click options. And you'll see right down here, you can customize the lifecycle stage when somebody submits. So if this is a form for a blog subscription page, you could have the lifecycle stage immediately marked as subscriber when that person fills out the form. Or if it's for an ebook or a webinar, those might be trigger criteria for marketing qualified lead. You can change it in the form settings here. And then those contacts are immediately marked as MQLs once they fill out that form. So again, this just saves you some time, and it makes it pretty easy to make sure that your life cycle stages are being accounted for in all areas of your portal. And I don't think I missed one. Okay. This is a very, very big tip that you should understand. Objects cannot move backwards in a life cycle stage unless you clear the property first. So this is a huge reason why you need to be careful marking contacts or companies in the other life cycle stage, because it's considered the last life cycle stage in the order. So if somebody is marked as other, and for example, if I'm marked as other in your portal and then I go and download an ebook and you would have wanted me to be marked as an MQL instead, it won't happen. So even if you have the form settings set up to mark me as an MQL, because I've already moved beyond that point, I can't move backwards. But you can move backwards if the lifecycle stage property has been cleared first. So I'll show you how to do that when we get to the workflows tip. But in general, it's just good to know that people can't move backwards. It's also to safeguard against something like if you have somebody as a true customer in your portal, and then they would go download an ebook a month later or something, you don't want them moved back to an MQL and start getting nurtured in your workflows. It wouldn't really make sense. So it's designed for that reason, but it can also be a pain if somebody got marked incorrectly and you want them to move back. You can, so I had showed you how you can individually, manually mark somebody's life cycle stage in their contact record. You can also bulk edit life cycle stages from the context index page. So I'll just quickly show you how to do this. And this is true for any HubSpot property, not just life cycle stages. But say I have select people in my portal that I want to change their life cycle stage all at one time. I would select them, and then you click edit, and it asks you to select a property to edit. You'd find life cycle stage, and then you choose it from the drop down here, and they will all get changed at one time. You can also bulk edit life cycle stages using a workflow, and there's 3 different types of workflows that you could set up. The first is just to set a life cycle stage. So in this example, you'll see anybody who's viewed a blog page at least 3 times would then get marked as an MQL. So the simple workflow would be the trigger criteria, whatever that is, to define the life cycle stage that you're trying to mark automatically. And then the next step would be to set their property life cycle stage to whatever the life cycle stage is that you're trying to set. You can also use workflows to change a life cycle stage. So if you have a list of contacts in your portal that were mismarked or need to be moved backwards, you can use that as the trigger criteria, so a list membership. The first step you have to do, as I mentioned, you have to clear their properties. So clear the life cycle stage. That means it just they have nothing in there. And then I'd recommend building in a delay, because there's sometimes where HubSpot will, if it tries to do steps too quickly, it won't read the previous step. So it's just smart to build in like a 5-minute, 3-minute delay to make sure that the property had cleared. And then your final step would be to set the lifecycle stage to whatever you were trying to set it to. And the final use case would be if you need to move a lifecycle stage backwards. Again, you have to clear it first. So this is usually the easiest way. In this instance, it's a really smart use case. If you are, for example, if you have a contact marked as a sales qualified lead, then they have a conversation with your sales team and you realize they're not really sales qualified. Maybe they need more time to make a decision. They don't have the budget right now. And you want to move them back to being marketing qualified so that they continue to be nurtured until they're ready again for a sales conversation. You could use a workflow to do that automatically in bulk. So first you would just clear the property lifecycle stage again, build in that delay just to be sure that it cleared properly, and then set the property backwards to whatever you need it set to. The final way that you can bulk edit lifecycle stages is through a list import. So you would set up your CSV file with your contact name, the contact email address, the lifecycle stage you want it to be, and then you would import that, do a list import, you map all your properties, and then it would adjust. Something to keep in mind is that HubSpot deduplicates contacts by email address or by contact ID that's provided by HubSpot, and companies are deduplicated by website domain or the ID provided by HubSpot. So when you're importing your list, make sure that you have an email address for every contact and a website domain for every company before you import. Otherwise, it will upload a bunch of new records that are not good. If you're trying to just update existing records, you need to make sure you have that information in your spreadsheet, or else it will create a bunch of duplicates. You can use reports to see the lifecycle stage totals in your portal. This report is available if you go to your analytics tools, and then you would look at contact analytics, so the reports related to your contacts in your portal, and you can select the lifecycle stage report, and you can either see it right in there, or you'll have the option to save the report to a dashboard if it's something that you want to monitor more frequently. But this will give you an idea of all of the totals in your life cycle, or all of the contact totals in each life cycle stage in your portal. So you can get an idea of where there are gaps, which we'll mention in a minute, or where, yeah, that would be the best use case for this, is where there are gaps. You can also use different reports to see the lifecycle stage conversion rate. So these would be a funnel report that you would build, and you can see the conversion rate for each step of your lifecycle stages, or if you just want to see leads to opportunities, leads to customers, whatever it may be. But this is a really smart report to use if you're trying to set goals. And I think I might mention this in a minute, but I'll say it anyways right now. If you're trying to set goals with how many customers do we need to bring in 2023 to reach our revenue goals? Well, before we can get to that point, we need to see how many leads do we need that will turn into customers to reach our revenue goals. So you can work backwards to see, okay, we need to be populating the very top of our funnel with X amount of leads if we want to achieve our goal of X amount of customers. So this is the next slide. You can use them to set goals like I just mentioned, and then also planning marketing initiatives. In addition to this, you can also use these reports to assess gaps. So this example that I have on the slide, you can see that they have 235 marketing qualified leads and only 6 sales qualified leads. So this is, to me, it's showing we have a lot of marketing qualified contacts, but they're not all getting turned into sales qualified. They're not making that last step to contact the team, set up a demo, whatever it may be. And I would want to know why. So hopefully within your team, you would also want to know why. And these are some questions that you could be asking as a marketing and sales unit to address the problem you may be having here. So one of the first questions you could ask yourself is, do you have a marketing qualified lead nurture stream set up? So we have all of these marketing qualified leads in our portal. Maybe they just don't have the opportunity to get to a sales qualified lead stage because they're not being nurtured. So they've downloaded an ebook. Then what? Are they receiving emails from your company? Are they receiving offers for a free demo, free trial to contact your team? Or is it just radio silent? Also, are there ample opportunities for that person to contact your team? So if you do have nurtured emails set up, I would check their performance. Are they being clicked on? Are they even being opened? That's a great starting point. If they are, how could we change the copy in the email to make the goal of that email to contact your team or set up a demo or start a free trial? Is that the end goal of these emails, or are we distracting them with something else? Also check your website. So are there opportunities once somebody has downloaded the ebook to then click into the next step? Do you have pop-up forms or drop-down forms showing people the opportunity to start their free trial or contact your team? And if you answer yes to all of that, you're still not really sure what the issue is, I'd encourage you to look at what your marketing to sales handoff looks like. There could be an instance where your sales team just doesn't know that there are that many marketing qualified leads sitting in your portal. Maybe it's not organized well. Are there notifications set up for your team? Do they have the information that they need? Do they feel like these MQLs are truly ready for a sales conversation? Or do we maybe have to go back to the drawing board of how we define an MQL so that everybody's on the same page? And finally, is your sales team too busy? So maybe the handoff is great and your sales team just can't handle the capacity of MQLs that are coming in. So what could you be doing instead to either help your sales team? Is there more automation that could be in place to make their processes faster? Or do we need to hire somebody else? So those are all questions that you should be asking just based off that one report with life cycle stages. You can also see, this report's a little bit more complicating, but you can create a report that shows your contacts broken down into life cycle stages. And then within each life cycle stage, you can see their original source into your portal. So this report is really helpful if you want to see which channels are driving the most qualified leads to your portal. In this example, so for qualified leads, we look more towards the bottom of those life cycle stages. So maybe MQLs, SQLs, and opportunities. We're seeing a lot of pink, purple, and yellow colors. So in that report, that would be organic search, and also paid social, but it is trailing quite a bit. So we can see that these channels are the ones that are generating the most qualified leads. And in planning your marketing initiatives and your goals for the following year, consider putting more resources or planning around those channels. So if email marketing is generating next to nothing, maybe we pull some resources from that and put them into more blogging for organic search or a paid Facebook campaign, paid Instagram ad, things of that nature to continue generating the quality leads that you're looking for. And the final tip that I have for you today is you can use smart content and smart call to actions in HubSpot in combination with life cycle stages to target people a little bit more clearly. So in HubSpot, they have the option for you to create smart call to action buttons and smart content that can be used in email blasts, website pages. And when you go to set this up, you set the rules for the content. So what does the rule have to be in order to show the content that you set up? And one of the rule options is life cycle stages. So you can show different blocks of content or different call to action buttons depending on the contact's lifecycle stage that's viewing that content. And I have an example. Also, if it's somebody completely new and they're not in your portal yet, they do not have a lifecycle stage, you would set the default content for that person to see. So you always have a default message of some sort. And then if somebody meets your criteria with the lifecycle stages, then they would see the this special content that you set up. So I have an example here. These are 3 different call to action messages, all displaying on the same button, but they change depending on the person that's viewing the button. So if a subscriber is on my website and they're viewing this button, my goal for subscribers would be to get them to move up into a marketing qualified lead, or if you think about it funnel wise, you'd be moving down. So what is the action we need the subscriber to take in order for them to be categorized as a marketing qualified lead? That could be to download your ebook or sign up for your webinar. So when they see this button, the message to them is download our free guide. It would link to your ebook or guide landing page. They'd fill out the form. Then they would become an MQL. If a marketing qualified lead was on my website and viewing the same page, the same button, but my goal for an MQL is to get them to turn into an SQL. And by doing so, they would need to schedule an appointment, contact my team, set up a free trial, whatever your action is that you have for SQLs. For MQLs. So when the MQL is on the site looking at the button, they might see schedule an appointment and it would take them to my contact page. And if I have a sales qualified lead on my website, they've already filled out a contact form. Maybe they've even spoken to my sales team, but they haven't gotten into my deal pipeline yet. Maybe they're still trying to make a decision. They're comparing offers and they're on my site. I would want to show them content or web pages that would encourage them to take that final step to become a customer of my product or service. And that call to action might say, read our reviews, go to our testimonial page, see our case studies. So we're directing them towards more bottom of the funnel content. And you can see in this example how these 3 people have very different motivations. They have very different stages. They're in very different stages of your marketing and sales process. So to show all of them one button that might say contact us would not make sense for most of those people. Or if you show them a button that says subscribe to our blog, that doesn't make sense for anybody who's already subscribed. So smart content's a very easy way, in smart, as in the name implies, smart way to market to different target audiences, and it takes minutes to set up. And normally at this part of the presentation, I'd ask you all for questions, but like Elizabeth said, we'll do an office hours. So I will just turn it back over to Elizabeth to kind of wrap up, but thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Madison, and very much looking forward to an opportunity to bring our Hug chapter together so everyone can ask questions and we can talk a little bit more about lifecycle stages. Thank you so much.
Thank you.